entire constructive of my first speaker from Team Proposition talked about surrendering terrorists. So we request the Team Opposition not to try to misconstrue this debate and try to ruin the decorum of this House and the decorum of this debate. What we're going to talk about, what in my speech I'm going to talk about, are essentially 8 things. Number 1, social and economic exclusion. Number 2, about amnesty. Number 3, about higher moral ground. Number 4, about the nature of crimes, and then the example of the Nazis. And then I'll move on to my own positive case and then talk to you about, firstly, about conditions necessary for long-term peace. Then I'll talk about controlling situations to take policy. And number 5, about not forgetting what happened, but forgiving for greater good. So firstly, moving on to social and economic exclusion. Now, what you need to understand over here, the fact is that the opposition over here comes over here and talks about no, social and economic exclusion is not the cause of it. There are other factors that exist. What we need to realize is the fact is that the majority of the people who do follow this ideology that they are talking about are the ones who have been economically and socially excluded. Because we do not see any rich elites standing up and following this very ideology. What my team government over here is talking about is the majority of the Taliban force. That is their foot soldiers, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the foot soldier of the Taliban who does not have any stake in the society. And hence, the need for following this very ideology is in essence necessitated by this very fact. Because they have been socially and morally excluded. And they realize that they have no stake in society. And then they are forced to take up arms against the state. And this is the foot soldier that we are talking about. And this is the very exclusion that we are talking about. We don't see any rich elite standing up and following this ideology, ladies and gentlemen. So that point rests completely with the government. Firstly, but then secondly talk about amnesty, whether it should be given or not. Well, the policy that we've been following for the last 8 to 9 years has been that of complete attack. And that policy has completely failed. Why is that? Because that policy has failed because we've seen only more terrorism, we've seen only more terrorists, we've seen more extremism throughout all Pakistan. And this terrorism has now increased throughout the world as well. So in essence, the policy that has been followed over the last few years has completely failed. Because it has failed to bring out the objectives that it was intended for. The objective being to calm down, to bring down terrorism. Terrorism has not come down. So in essence, the need for a change in policy is automatically necessitated. And that is what team government over here is talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Have a seat, sir. Moving on to the third issue about higher moral ground. Now my first speaker talked about clearly about how the government needs to maintain a higher moral ground because the government needs to maintain this very stance, ladies and gentlemen. Never once, not even one liner coming from the team opposition or towards this line of argument, which was the second line of argument of my first speaker. So we'll assume that that line of argument hangs there and then with us. Now number 4, about their positive case, about the nature of crimes that they were talking about, how these people are following, how these people are essentially there, how these people are essentially extremists and very bad. Now what you need to understand the fact is that extremists exist everywhere. You have extremism, you have Christian extremists, you have Jew extremists, you have Hindu extremists. But all of them do not go about and follow this very policy. You can have extremists within the elite as well, people who may have extremist tendencies. But all of them do not go out and start bombing each other. All of them do not get recruited to the Taliban. Why is that? Well, because the fact is that they have a stake in society. And the ones who do get recruited, the foot soldiers, are the ones who in essence do not have a stake in society. And therefore they realize the need for going to them and have an outlet for all these things. Now, last issue about Nazis. Now what you need to understand over here, the fact is that, in just a minute sir, that what you need to understand here, the fact is that fear breeds more fear. Now if you're terrorizing the people again, you're going to bring about more hatred, you're going to bring about more fear, and at the end of the day, you will bring about more terrorists like you have in the past. Do you deny that, sir?
So what the government of today is telling us that if you are not good enough to compete for the resources in the society, you can take up arms against the society and then be forgiven.
Have a seat, sir. Now this is a very childish argument that has come from this side. Because every Tom, Dick and Harry cannot stand up and take arms against the government. It is completely unfair to assume that. And every Tom, Dick and Harry will not do that. What we're talking about, the fact is that it is about giving people a stake in the society. And if you're not letting them do that, then they will have fear.
And policy of yours, sir.
Have a seat. Our policy is pretty much there. It was there within our definition that we brought about the executive order and the legislative order that we talked about. So that is a policy, and please do not try to harm the essence of this debate that we're having over here. So moving on to my own positive case. Number 5, conditions necessary for long-term peace. So what you need to understand over here, the fact is that when you have people who are becoming extremists, there's an underlying reason for that. The reason we've identified over here is cutting people off from their resources. So when you have the army bombing the particular amount of people, the outcome and the peace that will result will only be a short-term solution, ladies and gentlemen. The peace coming from that will only be short-term, because the reason the reason for these people going belligerent still stands there and then, and that reason for them going belligerent is not being tackled. That reason is not being defeated. Hence, the solution that will come as a result of that will only be a short-term solution. Let's take an example over here. 1971, we followed this very policy, and East Pakistan broke away. Did you have that very example over here, ladies and gentlemen? So this is a resource war, ladies and gentlemen. But what we are proposing over here is, and what we realize as the proposition over here is that the ideology of people does change, and the people do realize that they need to change their ideology, and this is the very change that the proposition over here is accepting over here. Have a seat, sir. And this is what we are doing. So we believe that it is necessary to allow these people to come back into the society, to join back into the society, to allow for a condition by which they will become part of the society again. There will be a chance to give them their fair share of resources, and have a chance of bringing them back into society and defeating the cause due to which these people essentially became terrorists. So moving on to my next line of argument, controlling situation with carrot and stick approach. Now, one major clarification that we made over here is that we are not saying that the war and the fighting should end completely. What we are saying is that a holistic approach needs to be taken. A holistic approach in essence that you do fight against those who are aggressing. However, you forgive those who are giving up arms, and those who have decided that they will not go belligerent against the state. Why do we need to do that? Because in essence, if you're not doing this, for example, you have people who do want to throw down arms, who do want to stop going belligerent, but they will not do that. Why? Because what they feel is that they might end up going in Guantanamo Bay, they might end up in jail, and they might end up getting a death sentence. So they'll have a fear, and that fear will breed more fear and will stop them from dropping down arms against the state. So we need to stop that. We need to encourage them in dropping their arms, and this is what this policy will do. They will be encouraged to drop arms, and this will allow us to take an approach that is holistic, and will allow us to not simply look at the surface of it alone. So moving on to my next line of argument, but not forgetting about what happened, but forgiving for greater good. So now exactly why should we not forget what happened? Because we need to change. We need to have a change in policy. We need to realize that we did something bad in past, and we need to correct that. And that is why we should not forget what happened. We should actually remember that by not forgetting, we're able to improve the situation, and we're able to make the policies that are needed to prevent the situation from arising in the future as well. Therefore, we should not forget, but we should actually forgive, ladies and gentlemen. Because when you have a war, and your army does go out, for example, the state army is going out. The army does go out, and the army does kill. Whether it is self-defense or preemptive action, that is something completely different. The fact is the people are being killed, and these people are an army of their own as well, and they are supporting a cause of their own as well. So what we are saying over here, in essence, is to try to tackle the cause. The cause being of the people not being given their fair share of resources. To try to give them the possibility of getting their fair share of resources, to change the policy that you have been following, because it has completely failed. So in essence, we believe that these people should be allowed to come back into society. Thank you.